We will now hear from our final speaker of the evening, Carolyn Burjoski. Carolyn was an ESL teacher with the Waterloo Region District School Board for more than 20 years. On January 17, 2022, she was registered as a delegation to the Board of Trustees meeting and allotted 10 minutes to speak. During her presentation, she read excerpts from 2 children's books available in WRDSB elementary school libraries and criticized the age-appropriateness of the sexual content. Less than 4 minutes into her presentation, the board chair claimed that she had violated the Human Rights Code and ejected her from the meeting. The board quickly removed the video from the website so people could not hear for themselves what Carolyn had to say. Before Carolyn speaks tonight, she would like everyone to see her 4-minute presentation back in January so the community can see what really happened. Let's roll that video, please.
Go ahead. If you can just reset that, and I just need to grab what I'm saying. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, and you can see my white screen there with the presentation and the date?
I can see your white screen, and your 10 minutes starts now.
All right. Good evening, Director Chanaka, senior leaders, and valued trustees of WRDSB. My name is Carolyn Burjoski, and I've been teaching English to new Canadians in this school board for over 20 years. Like most teachers, I focus on my own classroom, and I don't pay close attention to what's happening at the Ed Center. However, I'm becoming increasingly concerned with the decisions that are being made at this level, and that's what brings me here tonight. A recent Record article reported on the school board's intent to cull both the libraries and teachers' personal collections of books deemed harmful. This culling was already underway at the time the article was written, yet the board could not answer the reporter's request for the criteria being used, nor how the team was chosen. No information was shared with teachers about the philosophy by which our personal collections would be judged. In the same article, a senior leader said he was proud of the new diverse books that the board had already purchased. On November 8th, we received a memo in which the board listed criteria for removing books. For example, a book that is misleading might be removed. Well, that sounds perfectly reasonable. A case could be made that some of your new diverse materials are indeed misleading. We teachers received a long list of books and resources for Transgender Awareness Week. Some of these books are a positive addition because they show diverse families and represent a variety of ethnicities. However, I am very concerned that some of the resources in our elementary school libraries are inappropriate for young children. The resources that I am now showing are all in K-6 libraries. In the book Rick by Alex Gino, a boy named Jeff keeps talking to Rick about naked girls. Rick is confused because he doesn't think about naked girls, so he wonders if something's wrong with him. Rick gets invited to the school's Rainbow Club, and he ends up declaring an asexual identity. While reading this book, I was thinking, maybe Rick doesn't have sexual feelings yet because he is a child. It concerns me that this book leaves young boys wondering if there is something wrong with them if they aren't thinking about naked girls all the time. Well, so what message does this book send to young girls who might be in grade 3, 4? They are children. Let them grow up in their own time and stop pressuring them to be sexual so soon. In fact, some of the books filling our libraries make it seem simple or even cool to take puberty blockers and opposite sex hormones. The Other Boy by M.G. Hennessy.
Ms. Burjoski, I'm just getting a little concerned that your content may be problematic. I'm not sure exactly where you're headed, but I would caution you to make sure that you are not saying anything that would violate the Human Rights Code.
Oh, I'm not saying anything that would violate.
I'm just concerned, so please continue. That will not count against your time.
I hope that I can be heard because these are misleading books, and I'd like to tell you why. The other book by M.G. Hennessy chronicles the medical transition of Shane, who was born female and now identifies as a boy. Shane takes puberty blockers and is now excited to start testosterone. The doctor states that this hormone mixture will leave Shane infertile in the future. Shane's response is, "It's cool," a very typical adolescent response. This book is misleading because it does not take into account how Shane might feel later in life about being infertile. This book makes very serious medical interventions seem like an easy cure for emotional and social distress. And
Okay.
remember,
So I'm going to have to
Point of order. Point of order.
I'm going to point out that the Ontario Human Rights Code
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Carolyn Burjoski to the podium.
Thank you. I felt really calm until I watched that. I'm triggered. Hope I can finish this. I wanted everyone to see that. I don't know what our live stream is like right now, Joe, but I wanted people, it's good, he says, he's giving me the thumbs up. I want to get that message out. That video was about me. It got buried, and I was treated horribly in the week that followed, and nobody could see what I actually said. And I have a right for people to know what I actually said. So that's where I wanted to start. So before I get into my formal remarks, I want to show this little magnet I got. I had the opportunity to be in Memphis with my best friend back there. Woo! And we spent a morning at the Civil Rights Museum, and that was really poignant and memorable. I got a fridge magnet in the gift shop afterwards, but because this really spoke to me after my ordeal. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. What I've been through has been hard, but hard things bring other things, and it's a journey, and I'm so glad you're here with me tonight. I just wanted to welcome the live stream people, and I particularly wanted to welcome the people who came from the Waterloo Masjid. I spoke to your Sheikh Abdul Manan Sayed Nadwi today. We had a great conversation about the Muslim community being concerned about these books that I'm about to talk to about, and thank you for coming tonight. I'm motivated out of concern for children. I couldn't not speak. I couldn't not speak on January 17th, and I couldn't not speak tonight, even though my lawyers told me not to. So, here I go. Thank you. Imagine that you have an 11-year-old daughter named Emma. She's a grade 6 student at your local elementary school. For the most part, Emma seems like a happy kid. Unbeknownst to you, though, some kids at school have been showing Emma YouTube videos about teenage girls who now identify as boys. By taking testosterone, their voices deepened, and they were able to grow facial hair. Even though they were still minors, they were able to have their healthy breasts surgically removed to give them the flat-chested appearance of males. Your daughter is fascinated and watches numerous videos. At school, her teacher tells the class that what makes you a boy or a girl is not determined by your body, but how you feel inside. In the school library, Emma chooses a book about a girl who transitions to a boy. She uses an app on her phone to see what she might look like when she transitions. One day, Emma says to her teacher, "I think I'm a boy." Her teacher exclaims, "That's wonderful. What would you like your new name to be?" "I am Eric," your daughter replies. "That's a nice name, Eric," says her teacher. "Do your parents know that you are a boy?" "No," she replies, "I'm nervous to tell them." At the end of the school year, you flip through your daughter's yearbook and you see her picture with the name Eric under it. You're confused. You think that the school made a mistake, but they did not. You later learn that the school's failure to tell you about your child's social transition was intentional. My name is Carolyn Burjoski, and I was an elementary teacher with the Waterloo Region District School Board for more than 20 years. On January 17th, I spoke at the Board of Trustees meeting to address my concerns about the age-appropriateness of sexual content in children's books in elementary school libraries. Less than 4 minutes into my presentation, the board chair, Scott Piektowski, halted my presentation, suggesting that I had violated the Ontario Human Rights Code. After a vote on the issue by the board, the chair's decision was upheld, and I was ejected from the meeting, and I was not permitted to finish my presentation. The next morning, Waterloo Region District School Board Human Resources called to inform me that I was forbidden from returning to my classroom and contacting my colleagues. I was also informed that the board had hired an outside firm to conduct an investigation of a complaint made by the board involving the comments I had made at the meeting. The board removed the meeting video from its website so people could not hear from themselves what I actually said. The board and its chair took to social media, radio, and television to defend their actions and to characterize my statements as hateful, harmful, and transphobic. That was not a good week. I am now suing the board for defamation, and I have launched a judicial review of the board's decision to halt my presentation. I feel that the board and its chair engaged in this course of action to silence a delegation that was expressing concerns that it did not want to hear. By pursuing these legal actions, I hope to deter future school boards from trying to intimidate, silence, and punish and slander parents and teachers whose diverse opinions may be inconsistent with the school's ideology. I believe that what happened to me shows how far our school board has fallen from its former emphasis on critical thinking, open discussion, collaboration, academic excellence, and democratic values. It is essential that we work together to reform this school board, which must begin with recovering our democratic right to speak without fear of intimidation. A local resident summarized these ideas well in an email that she sent me. The concerns you raise about the 2 library books are ones that I share. I agree with you totally that infertility and other consequences of medical transition shouldn't be treated glibly, and that labeling children not yet experiencing sexual attraction as asexual is ill-advised, to put it mildly. It was your point about how little girls might feel reading Rick that resonated most strongly with me. Girls already learn so young that they are first and foremost objects to be looked at by boys and men in this world. I hate that they might first be exposed to that idea in their own school library. Even if I didn't share your concerns about these books, though, I hope that I would still support your right to speak and a public forum like a school trustee meeting. I hope that the scrutiny that Mr. Pietkowski and the trustees are now facing prompts some reflection on their part about the value of free speech and free thought, especially where it concerns what we are teaching our children in public schools. Many other Canadian parents have been expressing their concerns to school boards across the country. In June, Pierre Barnes, a parent from British Columbia, sent an email blast to school trustees across Canada. His email included examples of the pornographic images that his child had been exposed to in the school library. I do apologize for this picture, but you're adults, and this is in kids' schools. And I do apologize. I meant to say if people on the live stream should take their children out of the room if they're watching this. But there's a lot more, and there's more that's worse. In ironic turn of events, and you can look at them at the back table if you like later. In an ironic turn of events, one of these school board trustees was so shocked by these images that she sent an internal message to her board suggesting that the police investigate this dad for email that's illegal. This trustee was unaware that the pornographic images she wanted to report to the police were actually screenshots from books that were in multiple school libraries of her own board. If this trustee was ready to call the police to protect adults from pornographic materials, I question why she would not have acted to have these materials removed from the schools to protect children. Just as an aside, the Ontario College of Teachers was doing training on just this sort of thing, like the sexualization of our children and grooming. And this is reportable. What we're seeing in these books, it's reportable, and we have a duty to report. Had I been allowed to continue my presentation to the trustees on January 17th, I would have shared some of the school board's new resources for teachers. For example, the early years document, Changing How We Talk About Gender, advises teachers to tell children, many boys have penises, and some others do too. Many girls have vulvas, and some others do too. You get to decide if you're a boy, girl, both, or something in between. And if you look at the bottom of that screenshot, you'll see WRDSB, Transgender Week of Awareness. Those were sent to us. So teachers are getting these materials, and that will filter down to the classroom. It is my view that telling all children that they can choose if they are a boy or a girl is a radical and unscientific message that is likely to confuse them. For example, an 11-year-old girl whom I know attended a gender and stereotype class at her Waterloo Region Middle School. This event was presented by a third-party organization, which is a group from outside the school that comes in to speak to kids. By the end of the lesson, this young girl began to think that becoming a boy was a choice that she could make. She later reflected on what she had learned that day by telling her friend, I didn't realize until today that I could be a boy. It's important to note that this student had never questioned her girlness until she attended school that day. These ideas about gender are also being taught to much younger children by teachers who appear to be acting more as activists and who are seeking to inculcate these messages in teachable moments, even though gender is not in the curriculum for that grade. In fact, the 6-year-old daughter of a woman in Ottawa came home from school and told her mother what she learned that day. Her grade 1 teacher had told the class that girls and boys aren't real. This little girl was very upset to learn that she wasn't real. I'm worried that in an attempt to support a small group of gender-questioning students, we might be destabilizing the identities of many students who would never have questioned their identities as boys or girls. Young children have no concept of how the interior of their bodies work. We don't teach them about the reproductive system until grade 5. So young children think that hair, clothing, and activity choices are what make you a boy or a girl. They don't know what's inside the body. I believe that telling young children that they can choose to be a boy or a girl before they can understand how their bodies work is developmentally inappropriate, misleading, and unscientific. I'm concerned that schools might be reinforcing stereotypes instead of freeing children from them. Children may be internalizing this message: if I don't conform to gender stereotypes of girls who like dresses and boys who like sports, I might actually be the opposite sex. Or if I don't like how my body is changing at puberty, I can probably stop that with some medicine. In fact, a recent Newsweek article raises questions about the explosion in adolescent girls transitioning, receiving life-altering mastectomies and hysterectomies on healthy organs. This Newsweek article states, and I'm going to quote for a bit out of this article, within the last decade, there has been a meteoric increase of young people rejecting their bodies and identifying as the opposite sex. The vast majority of these youths are female. If this astronomical rise in gender dysphoria were due to greater awareness and acceptance of people who feel distressed by their sex, we would see similar increases across all demographics, including middle-aged women. But that is not happening. We therefore need to seriously consider what if gender dysphoria, particularly among impressionable young girls, is increasing due to social reasons. Many of the girls rejecting their bodies had no previous history of feeling distressed about their biological sex, and only started presenting gender dysphoria after a friend came out as trans, or after being exposed to the idea in an online forum. The article also reveals that other countries are rethinking this pathway to youth medicalization. Progressive countries such as Sweden, Finland, Belgium, and the UK are pulling back from the fast path of affirmation to medicalization. The article continues, Swedish authorities decided last year to bar the use of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones on most minors, arguing that there was insufficient evidence to back up the treatment. Finland took similar steps earlier, saying psychotherapy should be pursued before prescribing those drugs to children. In Canada, on the other hand, there has been relatively little public debate about treatment approaches. In the UK, the Tavistock Gender Clinic was recently shut down amidst controversy that it was not factoring other issues into patient care. In fact, children on the autism spectrum accounted for 1/3 of the patients at this clinic. Dr. Joey Bonifacio, medical director of Sick Kids Hospital Gender Clinic in Toronto, and a former researcher for Trans Youth Can, is now calling for more caution here in Canada. He states, the changes, and this is a quote from him, the changes that have occurred in Sweden, Finland, and now the UK should give us food for thought. Let's evaluate what's going on here. This doctor, who is an expert at the heart of gender medicine in Canada, is publicly questioning some of their own practices. He is telling us to slow down. Countries around the world are discussing this so they can make the best decisions for children. Why aren't we allowed to talk about this here in Canada? As an aside, I was listening to a podcast with Tara Henley last night, and she was that CBC reporter who left CBC, and then she wrote a letter in her why she was leaving the CBC, and it went viral. And then she was talking about being able to speak and to do stories that were dear to her heart or that she thought were interesting. And she was talking about how what the problem is, that there's no viewpoint diversity really allowed at the CBC. So this is, we haven't seen an article yet about what I just said from CBC at all. And Tara was just explaining, like, that's why she left the CBC. We need to hear what's going on in other parts of the country or in other parts of the world. I also observe that leaders are using what I feel is crafty and confusing language choices on this topic. For example, in the student census the previous spring, I had to explain this question to my English language learners who are in grade 5. Do you identify as a girl, gender fluid, gender nonconforming, gender queer, intersex, boy, non-binary, trans, two-spirit, or a gender not listed above. It was a tough class that day. I noticed immediately that the question did not ask, are you a girl? It asked, do you identify as a girl? This seems like a deliberate choice of words that could plant the idea in a child's head that their bodies do not determine whether they are a boy or a girl. I wonder what could motivate the equity department to phrase the question in that way. A year later, the director noted the results of that same survey, which found that 24% of the student population identified as 2S LGBTQIA+. Yes, I practiced that. In my opinion, language like this might be actively pushing children to question their gender identity. I believe that we should be more cautious because studies suggest that most children who are socially transitioned become locked into that identity and go on to seek future medical intervention, while the majority of children who are not socially transitioned grow out of their gender discomfort after going through a natural puberty. I am worried that some of the new books in our libraries might influence children to make that hasty decision. For example, the book Seeing Gender states, children should be believed when they state that they are a gender other than the sex they were assigned at birth. And they should be believed if they want to change their gender the next day. This book presents the idea that there is no need to discuss these ideas with your parents before you declare your new gender identity, no benefit in waiting to be sure or researching future consequences before making this decision. The message to kids seems to be full speed ahead. I'm worried that this initial step of social transition might be an on-ramp to a highway, carrying children into a future of very serious medical interventions and possible regret. D-Trans Reddit includes the stories of young people who regret their hasty decisions to transition. When I prepared this slide for my presentation in January, D-Trans Reddit had 24,000 members. 6 months later, this site supporting detransitioning young people has now grown to 39,000 members. I urge you to read their stories. At the beginning of my talk tonight, I told a story about Emma's transition to Eric. You may have wondered why the teacher didn't tell the parents that everyone at school was reinforcing Emma's boy identity. The answer is that the teacher was following Board Policy 1235, which states a school should never disclose a student's gender status to parents without the student's explicit prior consent. In practice, this means that teachers must refer to children by their new name and pronoun when at school, even if they are very young, but then switch back to the original name and pronoun when communicating with parents. I feel that this policy puts teachers in an ethical dilemma of having to lie to a parent or disobey the school board's directive. It also excludes parents from their own role of providing loving guidance to their child on a very complex and serious topic. I believe that this policy is also an outrageous breach of parental rights. When school boards assume the role of parent to our children and staff provide support for transitioning a child behind a parent's back, I believe we are seeing the modern echoes of past practices where governments interfered with families. How did we get here? When I asked an equity officer how this policy of not informing parents was developed, I was told that a diverse group from the transgender community was consulted. And it made me wonder how a committee that is populated by people from the same identity group can be considered diverse, inclusive, and equitable. Rather, it appears to be an exclusive group that influenced an important policy without the benefit of oppositional feedback. If this committee had included a trans person, a Muslim imam, a black conservative Christian, a detransitioned youth, and a feminist, that would be a more diverse and inclusive group. A more varied group of thinkers expressing their concerns to committees would ensure that blind spots are noticed, parents are consulted, unintended consequences are avoided, and sound decisions are made. The makeup of this committee is evidence that our school board is not including diverse thinkers when decisions are being made. And that's why we need a change of leadership. A recent poll from the region asked residents this question: how do you feel the WRDSB delivers on its responsibilities? 55% of the respondents said poorly or very poorly. This chart demonstrates Waterloo Region District School Board's failing grade at meeting the expectations of parents and students. My purpose in speaking on January 17th and today is simply to make WRDSB parents aware of the concerns of an experienced teacher. I believe we need an immediate reform of the school board so that children can be educated in a politically and ideologically neutral environment that focuses on academic excellence. I hope that this community now better understands why we should pay attention to what is going on in our schools and are more motivated to exercise their voices and their votes. On October 24th, we can elect trustees who operate in a more transparent, responsive, and democratic manner. I urge you to do your research and vote for trustees who will not intimidate the people with misapplied codes, nor slander those who come forward with reasonable concerns. Instead, vote for trustees who welcome the input of parents and who aim to refocus our schools to benefit children. Use these helpful websites to find trustees who align with your values. Vote for change so our kids can succeed. Waterloo Region, we can do this together.